had a drink together at 9 to celebrate something at work tomorrow.
Okay.
We went to bed. I went to bed with my kids. He went to bed in our bed.
What time did you guys go to bed?
This is Kouri Richins, and this is Eric, her husband, who is no longer alive. In 2023, Kouri Richins wanted the world to believe she was a grieving mother. She flooded the media, going on television to promote a children's book she authored about coping with the unexpected loss of her husband, Eric. She smiled for the cameras, spoke about healing, and comforted her 3 young sons. But behind that warm facade lay a psychological puzzle that has left criminal profilers completely stunned.
So you actually wrote this book with your children.
I did. Mm-hmm.
And it's only been a year. How did you process and say you go from processing death to I need to write a book and help others?
You know, I just watched the struggle that my kids were going through. And I actually, I went on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and trying to find something that we could use to cope at nights. Nights are the hardest, it seems like, for everybody when, dealing with anything. But I just wanted some story to read to my kids at night. And I just could not find anything. I couldn't find anything that really, suited them or helped them find comfort and peace. And so, I was like, let's just write one.
On the 13th of May, 2026, on what would have been her late husband's 44th birthday, that image was permanently shattered when a judge sentenced Kouri Richins to life in prison without the possibility of parole. A jury found that she hadn't just watched her husband pass away, she actively orchestrated it, lacing his evening cocktail with an extreme, fatal dose of a controlled substance. But one may ask, what drives an educated, successful woman to transition from a wife to a cold-blooded calculator? Today, we strip away the book tour narrative to analyze the terrifying psychology of Kouri Richins. We examine the mask of sanity she wore for over a year, the hidden multi-million-dollar debt that triggered her financial desperation, and the failed Valentine's Day plot that proved this was no sudden impulse. Most shockingly, we will dissect her bizarre behavior inside the courtroom, why she rolled her eyes and made faces as her husband's family wept, and the chilling psychological impact that drove her own young sons to submit letters begging the judge to lock their mother away forever. This isn't just a story of a crime, it is a documentation of a mind that believed it could script the perfect outcome. The Mask of Sanity. Eric Richins, 39 years of age, was found unresponsive in bed on the 4th of March, 2022. An autopsy result revealed that he passed away from acute substance intoxication, and the level in his blood was approximately 5 times the fatal dosage, according to the charging document. After his passing, Kouri Richins went on to publish her book, a children's book titled Are You With Me?, which is about a child whose late father watches over him as an angel. She went on national television to promote the book completely unknown to anyone. She was covering up the very act she committed. Let's talk about the mask. Have you ever seen someone who is so good at what they do that the public would never suspect them of anything bad? That person who remembers to show up anytime you need them, providing solutions to almost everything you ever asked. The kind of person where you think, I can't believe they could ever do such a thing, because the trail is too tiny to connect the dots. You know, when someone covers up an act so well, even when you get a glimpse of the truth, you stand up to fight against it, thinking it's just a made-up story. You genuinely believe they would never do something like that. But at the end of the tunnel, you realize that you were not living with the actual person, rather, you were living with the mask they built up. You keep trying to make sense of the situation, constantly going back and wondering what is wrong with your own brain. But at the very end, when the mask is removed, you find out you were completely used. You thought you were supporting a genuine human being, not knowing you were caught in a carefully crafted illusion. Kouri Richins is exactly what you wouldn't wish upon anyone, a public saint and a private monster. So many people sympathized with Kouri Richins for the loss of her husband early on, until the mask was uncovered and the Summit County Sheriff's Office arrested her for taking the life of her husband, Eric Richins. The three-year-old was charged with 1 first-degree felony count of aggravated homicide, as well as 3 second-degree felony counts of possession with intent to distribute a controlled substance. Kouri told sheriff's deputies that she and her husband were having a celebration together on the night of March 3. She said Eric had consumed a shot of alcohol and a THC gummy. Kouri claimed she then went to bed in their kids' room that night and rejoined Eric around 3 a.m. When she felt he was cold and realized he wasn't breathing, she called 911.
We had a drink together at 9 to celebrate something at work tomorrow.
Okay.
We went to bed. I went to bed with my kids. He went to bed in our bed.
What time did you guys go to bed?
9:30.
9:30? Okay.
9:45.
And then what alerted you to him today, right now?
When I just woke up, when I sleep with my kids, I'll wake up and I go back in my own bed.
Mm-hmm.
I just crawled over on his side.
And he was laying in bed? Okay.
He was on his back on the bed, and I just...
Okay. And you said he was on his back? Okay.
But Eric's family members told investigators shortly after his passing that they deeply suspected Kouri. According to warrants, he warned them that if anything happened to him, Kouri was to be blamed. Kouri claimed to have performed CPR on Eric, but fire and EMS first responders stated that was untrue, citing physical evidence coming from his mouth. Kouri once again tried to shift the blame away from herself, claiming her husband had an addiction to pain medication in high school, but had no substance abuse issues since. However, friends and family told police they never noticed any behavior indicative of substance use, and no such medications were found anywhere in the family home. The search warrants obtained by investigators detail the highly suspicious circumstances leading up to his passing. One of Eric's 2 sisters recalled and told investigators that the victim had called her a few years ago from Greece. While he and Kouri were on vacation, a drink she handed him made him violently ill. The sister alleged Eric firmly believed Kouri had tried to end his life right then. Then, on Valentine's Day in 2022, Eric suffered a severe allergic reaction after eating a sandwich Kouri gave him, which came along with a love note. He broke out in hives, couldn't breathe, and passed out, only surviving after using his son's EpiPen and taking Benadryl. When Eric woke up, he immediately called a close friend to let him know exactly what had happened, making it the second time that Kouri Richins allegedly tried to take the life of her husband. Which at this point, one might ask, was Eric Richins completely blinded by the love he had for Kouri, even after suspecting she was trying to harm him? Or was it purely an ignorance of the warning signs? Another major catalyst for Kouri Richins' actions was the hidden multi-million-dollar debt that triggered her extreme financial desperation. The prosecution presented what they believed was the absolute heart of their case against Kouri Richins: financial motive. A forensic accountant walked the jury through bounced checks, hard money loans, and a real estate business described as completely imploding. By the day Eric Richins died, Kouri was allegedly $1.6 million in debt. Legal experts breaking down the testimony in real time explained exactly what this meant for both sides. The prosecution's argument centers entirely on timing. Kouri commits to buying a massive $2.9 million mansion with no renovation money, right as high-interest loans are coming due. Eric passes away. She closes the deal the very next day. She lists the property just a week later. Prosecutors argue that is no coincidence. That is the behavior of someone who knew exactly when the money was coming. Before his passing, Eric secretly changed the beneficiary of his will and his power of attorney, completely replacing Kouri with his sister. A warrant states he didn't tell Kouri about the change because, according to his sisters, he believed Kouri might harm him for the money and wanted to ensure their kids were financially secure. Warrants show Kouri only learned she had been cut out of the will during a family gathering on March 5, the day after Eric's death. Up until that point, according to the family, Kouri had absolutely no idea she had been replaced in the will and that Eric's sister was put in charge of his estate. This sudden realization left her financially unstable. And on March 28, just a few weeks after Eric's passing, Kouri sued Eric's sister for control over his estate. She claimed their prenuptial agreement entitled her to the money, the family home, and all other assets. However, Eric's sister's legal response directly mentioned the pending homicide investigation. Ultimately, Utah enforces a strict statute that completely prevents individuals from profiting from the loss of a life they caused. Scene 4. Most shockingly of all was the way she behaved inside the courtroom, while she rolled her eyes and made faces as her husband's family wept. She showed absolute zero remorse to the cries of her husband's family. The psychological impact of her actions eventually drove her own young sons to submit heart-wrenching letters, begging the judge to lock their mother away forever. Letters from her sons were read aloud in court. They all stated they would feel completely unsafe if their mother was ever released from prison. The children revealed that Richins had threatened them and used extreme emotional manipulation tactics when they refused to obey her. "You took away my dad for no reason other than greed, and you only cared about yourself," said her middle son, who is now 11 years old. He described having to be a parent to his younger brother because his mother completely failed to watch over them. Richins even made the boy deeply paranoid about sitting on his dad's side of the bed, telling him he might lose his life too. The oldest son, now 13, stated he also felt forced to take care of his younger siblings, noting that his mother frequently neglected them while dealing with her own vices. The courtroom was filled with intense emotion. So many felt deeply for the children who were unfortunate enough to have Kouri Richins as a mother. At last, the final verdict was delivered. Kouri Richins was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole.
A person convicted of those things is simply too dangerous to ever be free. Accordingly, Ms. Richins, based on your conviction on count 1, first-degree felony aggravated murder, the court hereby sentences you to life without parole.
But behind the sentence, one ultimate question remains. How could someone who displays such kindness and goodness in the public eye be so cruel and heartless behind closed doors? Choose the right path in life, and let's work together to make society a better place. If you watched to this point, please subscribe to the channel and drop a comment below. See you on the next one. Bye.